Welcome to America's Top Rebbitzins. In the merit of this class, may Hashem watch over all the Jewish people and give enormous strength to the IDF soldiers, including Raz Bat Doron, Rinat Bat Mechola, Roy Ben Nitza, and Ram Ben Moore. Please click on the subscribe button to subscribe to us on the America's Top Rebbitzins YouTube page, or click follow to follow us on your podcasting app so that you are the first to know when an inspiring new episode is posted. Today, I am very happy to welcome Chana Mason. Chana is a woman of many talents. She was born in Bogota, Colombia, then moved to Miami, Florida when she was 5 years old. She graduated from Dartmouth College and then moved to Sydney, Australia for 1 year before making her way to Israel to jump deeper into Judaism. In Israel, Hannah has worked in education and also in online retail and marketing before she began coaching. Hannah has dedicated the past 2 decades to all things personal growth related, including healing, nutrition, and spirituality. Among the many hats that she wears, Hannah is also a breathwork coach. She helps people use their breath to delve deeper into their psyche and elevate higher into their spirit. Breathwork offers your mind and body a space to experience emotions and to heal old wounds that have been holding you back. Hannah helps people use the quiet of their breath to attune to the rise and fall of their emotions, hold them with compassion, and rekindle a love for themselves, for life, and for others. Wow, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Hannah. Please tell us more about yourself and what you do.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the listeners. I hope that we can share something new and some new lights can come in. So it's actually really powerful for me, having done a lot of very intellectual work. I grew up kind of a smart kid. That's how I ended up at Dartmouth, and always praised for my intellect. So it was a very safe place for me to live. And it was a really great way for me not to be in my body and not to be connected to my intuition. So even though I would have sometimes like dreams or visions that would come to reality, or I had a lot of intuitive knowing in my body, I never listened to it at all, because I thought it wasn't like scientific and like intelligent. And so I went to college to study engineering, and eventually ended up switching into theater. But still, even my approach to theater was very intellectual and analytical. It wasn't really from a place of how do people connect more inside of themselves. Um, and things started to shift when I came to Israel, because I'd been struggling for many years with anxiety and depression, and had tried going to a lot of therapists, and a lot of therapists with very big degrees, to be honest, and nobody was particularly helpful. And part of the reason was twofold. One is there wasn't a recognition of the relationship that the body has to the psyche. And the other was that there was no acknowledgement of soul.
Wow.
And so what I was really suffering from was like soul pain, and my body was holding so much emotional pain. And it wasn't until I started seeing people who really engaged with the body, using somatic tools and somatic therapeutic tools, and actually touching my body itself and inviting it to speak, that I started to heal. And that has really been my journey over the last 20 years. And it's become so beautiful to be able to also shift in the way that I work with people, from just intellectual work, which I still do mostly with my business coaching clients, and shifting much more into, can we be real in the present moment? What's coming alive in you? What's present for you? Really listening to the body.
Wow. And so that's so interesting because you mentioned the mind and the psychic connection. Did you find, like, in, just you personally, with all the things that you were dealing with, that it showed up in your body, like that your anxiety and depression would manifest into physical symptoms?
Yes, 100%. Showed up as pain. One really distinctive thing is I came to Israel to learn for the first time. I didn't grow up religious, and I heard about this thing. I wanted to be religious since I was like 5, but I just thought it wasn't accessible to me because I didn't have a Jewish education. And then when I was 20, I came on like a summer trip to Israel, and I overheard 2 people talking about this thing called yeshiva, where you could get a Jewish education. And I didn't know such a thing existed, and I was so excited. And so after my year in Sydney, I came to Israel to learn, and I was only planning on being here for 2 months. And that was over 20 years ago. I'm like kind of like a walking statistic of like those people who just end up staying.
Wow.
And what was I going to say? it was when I like started in that spiritual quest that I started getting more connected to my body. And one of the reasons that that happened is that I came in 2001 in the middle of the Intifada. And, you know, my pizza shop blew up and my bakery blew up and the bus I took all the time blew up. And I was on a date on Ben Yehuda Street. And I lived 10-minute walk from Ben Yehuda Street. And the minute the guy got me to my door, we heard boom, boom, boom,
Wow.
exactly where I'd been 10 minutes before.
I can't. Oh my gosh.
And I was so impressed with how well I was dealing with all of this intensity. And I was like, look at this. I'm not falling apart. I'm not having an emotional breakdown. I am so resilient. Look at me. Meanwhile, my body developed sciatica so bad that I was walking, like shuffling my feet like an old lady. And I was 23.
Wow. And so sciatica, for people who don't know, it's a shooting pain down your back from your leg, or what is it?
Right. So it's like it starts at the bottom of the spine,
Yes.
and there's a sciatic nerve that goes down both the legs on the outside of the leg.
Yes.
And the pain was just so bad that that walking was just excruciating. And I went to, it took a while to get there, but I found this body worker who started working with my nervous system and teaching me these concepts of how the body actually holds emotions. This was totally novel to me.
It's so interesting that you mentioned about body work, because I recently, when I say recently, I mean a few months ago, I went to do something called myofascial release. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's reminding me of what you're
Yes.
talking about.
Yes. So it was something else, but yes, it's like in that same, like really honoring and listening to like, what's the body holding? There's so much there.
Right. And speaking about the body, something that you do is breath work, which incorporates the body and the emotions. So can you tell me a little bit more about breath work? Like, what is it? What does it look like? How do people do it? Like, what is it?
So it's a really good question because breathwork is like this umbrella word that includes a lot of different things.
Okay.
And people who are first introduced to breathwork through one of those avenues just assume that everyone else is talking about the avenue that they know. So there are a
That's
whole
funny. Okay.
bunch of breathwork skills that are taught to people in the medical space to regulate anxiety or blood pressure or help with muscle tension. And those are like breathwork tools, like breathing exercises that people can do at home that take a few minutes or something like that. And then there's Wim Hof, where he's helping people gain more and more control over the breath so they can have more mind-body control. And then there's a family of breath work that's really taking people through a journey that's at least an hour and up to a whole day. And that's the type of breath work that I do. So in that category of breath work, in general, there's two camps. There's the holotropic camp, which was developed by a professor out of Stanford called Stanislav Grof. And it's kind of like induced hyperventilation. Someone's lying on their back and they're breathing very intensively. And through that intensive breathing, a couple of things happen. One is the body gets really highly oxygenated, which invites a relaxation response. But also any emotions that are kind of related to hyperventilation start coming up to the surface. Old traumas get released, different emotions get released. And then for me personally, I do something called conscious connected breath work. To me, this is like the feminine of the holotropic. The holotropic is intensive. It's more masculine. Conscious connected breath work is so simple. So for those of you who are watching, you'll be able to understand this a little bit more, but I'm going to use words to describe it as best as possible. So someone lies down, usually on a yoga mat on their back, and they breathe in and out through the mouth and invite a full breath that expands their belly as far as it can expand and expands the chest as far as it can expand. And then they just let go. And gravity creates an exhalation on its own. And it looks like this. That's it. So it's just into the belly, into the chest, and then gravity releases from the chest and releases from the belly.
Wow.
It
Very simple.
seems so simple, like it's
Yes.
kind of dumb, right? And what happens is that for a lot of people, like in any meditative experience, there's mental chatter that gets in the way. Am I breathing right?
Yes.
Am I doing it right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this is getting really uncomfortable. I'm going to breathe shallow right now because I can't feel too much. So what we do when we don't want to feel, we clench our jaw, we close our mouths, we tighten our chest, and we stop breathing.
Okay.
Somebody might even say they're breathless.
Right.
Right? Shock is just this, you stop breathing entirely. So what we're doing here is literally the opposite. You're lying down in a vulnerable position on your back. Your eyes are closed, your arms are at your sides. If some gunman walks in the door, it's like the most vulnerable position you can be in, right?
Right.
And yet you're choosing to breathe fully in a vulnerable position. So you're telling your body through the breath, I'm safe. And I'll geek out with you just a little bit. At the bottom of your lungs, you have these sensors that get triggered when you have a full deep breath. And those sensors induce a parasympathetic response. So you have two parts of your nervous system. You have the sympathetic nervous system, which induces fight or flight. That's a stress response. And you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what induces relaxation, calm, rest, and healing. And the sympathetic nervous system has sensors at the top of the lungs. So when you breathe shallow, you're actually telling your body, stay stressed. And when you breathe deeply, which is why we tell people to breathe deeply when they're having a panic attack or hyperventilating or something like that, just the act of breathing deeply triggers the body to go into relaxation. So
That's
it can take a
fascinating. I
while.
find it so I find this concept so fascinating because our breath is our breath is always with us. We could be in the car, we could be in a classroom, we could be in a stadium, we could be in the supermarket, we could be with our kids, wherever it is. We always have access to our breath. And I feel
Yes.
like this is something so accessible to all of us that like we don't like we could do it anytime if we knew how to do it properly.
Yeah. And so you could just, right, you're standing at the supermarket and you're noticing your body starting to tense up because your kids are nagging you that they want chocolate.
Yes.
And you can just choose to bring in a full body breath that you can take with you anywhere just to relax you in the moment. What happens in the breathwork space is that you're breathing like that for an hour and a half,
Wow. So
at
it's
least.
continuous. Wow.
It's continuous and there's no pause. Normally you breathe, you inhale, pause, exhale, pause. We get rid of the pauses. So because there's so much oxygenation and so much relaxation happening, people's minds go into a very deep state of trance, not unlike a hypnotic trance.
Okay.
And their bodies kind of fall asleep. And in that space, so many cool things happen. For some people, emotions that just need to be felt come up to the surface because there's so much safety. Just like if, your kid is in school and they're having a really stressful day, but they don't want the other kids to see them cry, they come home and totally decompress and flip out on you.
Yes.
Because home is safe and you're safe,
Yeah.
hopefully, right? As a mom, that you can hold their emotions. And so they finally let it all out and finally cry about the thing they've been holding in all day.
Right.
So that's kind of what the body's doing. It's like finally there's enough safety that it can feel. Other things that happen is some people just start having a really blissful experience where they feel God's presence, they feel an angelic presence, they just bliss out. And
Wow.
that's a small percentage of people. Some people end up having visitations, either from old memories that need healing, like old traumas that they haven't experienced, or from ancestors or family members who have messages for them because they're open. They're
That makes
in
sense.
that place, we say like when we fall asleep, we're in that place between this world and the next world.
Yes.
So we go into that nether place. And if you're deep enough and there are people who have things to tell you, they'll tell you.
Wow. That's fascinating, right? Because I can imagine you're so open, your body's so relaxed. Not only your body is relaxed, your mind is relaxed and you're open. You have this just mind, body, and imagine emotional openness as well.
Yeah. And so some people can do that on their own. I personally, for me, having another human being holding space for me
Yeah.
makes a huge difference.
Yes. I agree. I could see that.
So that's one of the things that I do is somebody starts to cry and I'm just there. I support them. I hold them. One of the things my teacher taught me, one of my teachers taught me is to say, I see you.
Wow.
It's amazing to me what happens to me when I have emotions welling up into my eyes and someone's there next to me saying, I see you. Boom, I start to cry. It's like just being witnessed is so powerful and so healing because trauma happens alone.
Right.
You
It
could be a
really
room with
does.
100 people, but if you're alone in your consciousness,
Yeah.
trauma happens alone. And
Yeah.
so the healing of trauma happens in partnership or in community.
It's so interesting that you say that. I'm letting that sink in for a moment. That's why I was so quiet at first. But trauma does happen alone, and I just really, wow. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about personal experience. That's what I'm doing right now. And then the healing, then
Hmm.
the opposite. Like you're not alone. You're with somebody who's there to see you, to witness you, and to support you. So the healing comes in community, so to speak, even if it's a community of just two people, just so that you're not alone. And that makes a
Yeah.
whole difference because I don't think human beings were made to be alone. Like we're wired to like need other people. We don't necessarily need 100 other people, but like one or two or three people that are just close in our lives. And if we don't have that, or if we didn't have that, when we're in a healing space and we are offered that and we have access to that, that makes such a powerful difference in our own trauma healing.
Yeah. And so one of the things that's interesting with that is I do work with people one-on-one, but I also facilitate groups.
Okay.
So yesterday I worked with a group of 10 women,
Hmm.
and there are a few different ways that trapped energy moves through the body. So trapped energy might sound really woo-woo, but an emotion is energy.
Right.
So if you have a traumatic experience somewhere in the body, your body's going to hold it until you're ready and safe enough to access it.
Yes.
And in order for it to move, some sort of motion has to happen. So either the body has to move, or the body needs to vocalize, or you need to express emotion through crying or laughter or something like that. And one of the things that happens is that when one woman in the room vocalizes, like yesterday, there was this one woman, and I could see like right in her belly, she needed to make a sound. And I was like, there's a sound that's really waiting to be heard right here. And she's like, I don't want to bother everyone. I'm like, you're going to liberate everyone. And as soon as she started making noise, it moved like a wave throughout the room. Other people are like, oh, I can make noise. And so you just start hearing like all of these sounds moving through the room
Wow.
because people feel like they're allowed
Right.
to do something that, so many of us feel like we don't have a voice. It's a space where, so there's something about being in a space where you're hearing other people,
Yes.
and sometimes even themes will move through the room.
Oh, like
And
what?
that
Like, for
happens
example.
totally subconsciously. There was once a woman talked about, she talked about it afterwards,
Okay.
that she used to love dancing. And somehow dancing had become very constricted for her, and she lost all the joy of dancing.
Okay.
And that ended up being this theme that came up, that as she was breathing, she was liberated to love dancing again. And she kind of shifted her whole story around dancing. So she's just picturing herself like dancing with such freedom and expression. And this is totally happening in her head. Like nobody knows this is going on.
Wow.
There were 5 other women in the room who either saw a dancer, saw themselves dancing, had the theme of dancing come up. And it was just, people were just like, oh, me too, me too, me too. It was very cool. So there are themes
Wow.
because we're all in that subconscious space, and the subconscious is much more connected to Ein Sof, to the oneness that is Hashem. So we're just more plugged in and more intuitive.
I find that also like we're all one soul. The Jewish people are all one soul and we're all connected. So that's what happens sometimes when I don't know what other word to use, but when we're vibing something. So this woman was vibing dancing. The other women picked up her vibration of dancing and they also thought it, even though it wasn't spoken, even though it wasn't conscious, and expressed, it was picked up through vibrations. That's really, really a cool concept.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's a funny thing because we're so petrified of our vulnerability. We're
Yes.
petrified of making sounds or moving or telling other people that I was thinking about myself dancing. And it turns out to be that those are the things that draw us to each other. When you see another person crying, it's like an invitation for connection. It's an invitation to be there and show up, and to also, it's permission that you are also allowed to cry.
Right. So that's what I was exactly thinking when you were talking, like this whole time describing the breath work and how it affects people and how it helps to heal trauma. And like this is so vulnerable. That's exactly the word that came up. And I almost like closed up in my shell because it's so vulnerable, you know?
Yeah.
It's scary. It's scary to be vulnerable. That's what I'm trying to say.
It is scary to be vulnerable. And without vulnerability, you don't have intimacy. And without intimacy, like intimacy is what allows us to be connected to Hashem and to connected to other people. It's
Right.
the prerequisite. And when you talked about closing up in your shell, to me, that's like a very, in a nutshell, a very masculine play. Like the masculine is very defensive and fights, tightens its muscles, goes out and goes to war. The
Yes.
feminine is open and soft and vulnerable.
Yes.
And what we're in now in Yemot HaMashiach, in this end of times, we're in the rising of the feminine.
Yes.
And the Western world has gotten that a little bit confused. They think the rising of the feminine means that women start acting masculine, which
Right.
so many of us, me for sure, have gotten stuck in. You know, that's what got me into an Ivy League school. I was playing the masculine. And the feminine is soft and open and vulnerable. And when you're soft and open and vulnerable, the Shekhinah can inhabit you.
Yes, and I totally agree with everything that you're saying, and so that's because I agree with you. This is what's leading me to ask this question because I cannot be the only one who feels this way. I'm asking on behalf of everybody who's listening who maybe feels the same way like this. You know, like if you want to be open and vulnerable and feminine, which I think most women do, me included, but it's scary. Again, like it's scary because you feel like you have to defend and protect yourself. You want to be open, but then you feel like maybe when you're open, you're going to be attacked. And who wants to be attacked?
Yeah,
So there's that
right.
dichotomy.
So my answer to that is courage.
Yeah.
That's my answer to that. I feel like I end up using that word a lot when I'm facilitating,
Okay.
particularly when I'm inviting someone to make a sound, because that for most women is the scariest thing.
Right.
They
Again.
find it really vulnerable. Because at least if I'm lying down, I have my eyes closed, there might be 8, 10 other women in the room. They all have their eyes closed. Nobody's really seeing me. So I can have my own little experience. But if I make a sound, then I'm really being heard.
Yeah.
And that feels so scary.
Yeah.
And it's shocking how scary it is, even if the only person hearing you is me.
Right.
Even in one-on-one, it's scary for
Yeah.
people. And I've experienced that being the person who's scared to make a sound.
Right.
And so I'm just thinking about this one woman who's just like, I can't, I can't, I can't. I said, I'm inviting you to be a little bit courageous. And so she made a little bit of a sound and it was like, like
Okay. All
barely
right.
audible. And I said, do you want to do it together? And
Mm.
she said, okay. So as she was going, I started going, ah, and her voice started meeting me.
Wow.
And eventually her voice got louder and louder. And she had this booming vocal. And then she said, wow, can we do that again? It's not the first time I've gotten that. We ended up doing that 3 or 4 times. And then she cried like nobody's business. Finally, she was able to feel it was this huge release for her. So I would say that there's this combination of there's nothing more courageous than vulnerability.
I see.
And
Yeah.
there's
Mhm.
something about doing it together that makes it less scary. So engaging in vulnerability in community makes it less vulnerable.
I like that. That's a very good point, right? Because you're sharing the experience with others, and then you're actually you're empowering others by expressing your vulnerability. You're inviting others to do the same, to join you. Well, if she could do it, I could do it too.
Right. But also me just vocalizing together with the client
Yes.
that we're doing that together. So
Yes.
somehow it's like, okay, I think I could do this. It's a little
I
less
love
scary.
I love that because again, it's the support aspect. Even if it's just one on one, it's you supporting the client. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. So I mean, I know that you're also passionate about how meditation and focused awareness can bring light and healing to ourselves and to others. So I wanted to see if maybe you can please share with us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I feel like I'm going to be very general here, but
Okay.
there's two types of meditation. There's meditation whose sole purpose is to encourage you to experience mindfulness, meaning, can you stay in the present moment? So
Okay.
that might happen through silence. That might happen through a repetition of a type of breath. Inhale for 4, pause for 4, exhale for 4, pause for 4, like that kind of thing, for example. And because I'm focused on this one thing, so I'm trying to stay present in the present moment.
Yes.
And there are lots of different strategies for how to create mindfulness.
Yes.
There's a whole other category of meditation that's focused on, I don't have a better word for it, but moving energy.
Okay.
Either moving energy by actually moving energy through the body, or by moving energy by helping you work on shifting your consciousness, like shifting your beliefs, or focusing on a vision of where you want to go or what kind of world you want to create, or moving energy by plugging into the body and seeing where there are places of imbalance or pain or emotions and really being present for them so they can come up to say hello.
Okay.
In order to do the second category, mindfulness just happens. If you're not present for the meditation and you're thinking about what you're making for dinner, you can't do anything the meditation is asking you to do.
That's true.
Um, and there are times where I just want to sit in silence and can I be present in the moment? And in so doing, I start noticing what are the mental patterns that just keep showing up over and over and over again. But I've become a huge fan of this energetic, moving type of meditation, which is what tefillah is supposed to be, but we forgot.
Interesting. Okay. Tell me more about that.
So, um, so when I daven, when I do the Shemona Esrei, for example, the Amida,
Yeah.
I'm using my mental awareness and my hands and my heart in the most engaged way that I possibly can. And mind you, sometimes I'm thinking about what I'm making for dinner and mumbling. So, like, I'm human just like the rest of us. But this is my ideal. Just having this as an ideal is a total shift in my life compared to what I used to do. I used to have an intellectual relationship with tefillah, which is what I think most people have. They're focused on words.
Right.
So, on a good day, first thing I do, I take 3 steps forward. I put my hands over my heart and I get myself really present. And I have a whole series of things that I say that are all about who am I. I'll just give you like a couple of things. I say, I am Emunah, I'm courage, I am wisdom, and I am compassion. I've been doing this for about 6 years. And you
Okay.
know what? Saying it every day is making it more and more real every single day.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I don't just say it intellectually, I feel it in my body. That's the big piece.
Right.
And I feel love in my body. By the time I'm done with this whole exercise, I'm ready to show up and have a conversation with the divine.
Wow.
Any upset or shame or frustration I had before I put my hands over my heart is gone.
It's so simple, so
And
powerful.
so simple, so powerful. And everyone can create whatever it is for them. But putting your hands over your heart is telling your brain, focus here, because your hands have take up a huge amount of space of your brain.
Interesting.
And so wherever you put your hands, your brain's like, oh, this is really, really important. Because because when we're doing stuff with our hands, we're putting a lot of mental focus.
Right.
But if your eyes are closed and you have your hands over your heart and you put your mind's eye on your heart also. So the other big chunk of your brain is your visual cortex. So your brain is being told, listen to the heart.
Right.
When we talk about taher libenu lovdecha be'emet, right? What do we want? We want to be servants of the heart, not servants of the intellect.
Wow.
And so we're engaging the heart, and biochemically what happens is that the heart and brain synchronize. And you can actually measure this on a heart monitor or a brain monitor. The brain waves and the heart waves synchronize in a beautiful, harmonious pattern. that actually creates ease and relaxation and love and calm in the body.
And you could do this by just by placing your hands over your heart.
Placing your hands over your heart and inducing heartfelt emotions, gratitude, love, joy, compassion.
Okay.
Right? So you do that for 4 to 5 minutes and you will create what's called heart-brain coherence.
Okay.
I was doing that before I heard about this heart-brain coherence thing. But when I heard about it, I was like, oh, cool, I've been doing this for so long. It was awesome. And then when I start my Amidah, I say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. That's not a metaphor. I'm calling upon my ancestors
Right.
to be with me as I'm davening.
Right.
So I picture Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah at my side. We're davening together because they're my mamas and my papas and they love me.
Right.
And what I've been working on over the past few months has been adding my family tree that is more particular to me. My parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents, I also see them davening with me. And then behind all of them is the rest of Am Yisrael. Do you know what it is to show up as the leader of all of these people and we're all davening together?
Oh my, that's incredible.
It's incredible. I know, it's so cool. And so when, and then when I say Magen Avraham, I end up kind of cupping my hands in my mind. I'm cupping my hands physically, but in my mind, I'm picturing that under my hands is the land of Israel.
Okay.
Magen Avraham, that Hashem should protect the land of Israel, which right now we could really use.
Yes.
And so my hands are actively involved in thinking about actually creating the kind of world that I want. I'm visualizing it, I'm feeling it in my heart, and my hands are engaged. And we're meant to be a Mamlechet HaKohanim. And how do the Kohanim bless the people? With their hands.
Right.
We're meant to bless the world with our hands.
Yes.
It's not just them, it's all Jewish people. We bless the world with our hands. Our hands are meant to be conduits of light. We're Or Lagoyim. We've just turned these literal phrases into metaphors, but they're not metaphors, they're real.
Right. Wow. It's taking a minute to sink in because you're right. Like there's so much energy coursing through our whole bodies. And I feel like our hands, our fingers in particular, actually, they're like outlets for our energy.
And you can feel that if somebody puts their hands on your back. There's something really powerful that happens, simple and powerful.
Yes.
One of my healing teachers, she said, everyone has the capacity to heal. How do you know? Because when you have a headache, you put your hands on your head. When you have a boo-boo on your knee, you put your hands on your knee. When your child has a boo-boo on their knee, you put their hands on their knee or you kiss it.
Right.
You understand intuitively that your touch matters.
Right. Yes. 100%. Even when somebody is upset, so it's so interesting because I was in the hospital. This was already over a decade ago, a long, long time ago. I was in the hospital for a very unpleasant procedure, and I was crying, and I was really, really upset. And I had never seen this before. But the nurse came over and she asked me how I was doing. Obviously, I was crying. I'm like, I'm not doing well, And then she took her hands. And I don't know what she did, but she placed one hand on my shoulder and one hand like on another part of my body. I don't even remember at this point. And I was completely calm.
Wow.
It was amazing. And I couldn't
one of those like
myself.
Clandestine energy healers.
Yeah, yes. And she was just a nurse. And then I said, what did you do? Because it was amazing. Because I was really, 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 really upset. Like I was in a heightened state of emotion. I was really upset. I did not want to. This was an unpleasant procedure. And I said, what did you do? And she said to me, in the hospital, there are a lot of people who are going through this procedure and they're very upset, just like you. And we are trained to calm them down. They teach us how to touch the patients in a certain way to calm them down. And it was like instantaneous.
That's incredible.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. Like when you're saying about the power of touch, the power of our energy, through our hands, using our hands to heal, it really is powerful. Obviously, like, a doctor uses his hands to heal physically, surgeons or like chiropractors even, but other people, nurses and doctors as well, and other people like practitioners like you and others, when they touch us, even when as mothers, as we touch our children, we have the ability to calm them down, to make a difference, to alter their state. It's really, really powerful, human touch. We don't realize how powerful it is. But listen, we can harm with our hands, but we can also heal with our hands.
Yes.
as mothers, especially.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a powerful
Okay.
thing.
That's what came up for me when you were saying that. I'm like, wow, I remember that time. But I know that you also have strong expertise on how thoughts affect our emotions and behavior and how to shift our thinking so that we can experience more clarity and joy. And I personally think that this concept is also so powerful, much more powerful than people realize. And because we can create power over our own emotions by controlling our thoughts. I was wondering if you could maybe please explain how our thoughts affect our emotions and our behavior, and also how we can influence our thoughts to live a happy, positive, and joyful life.
Um, so so I got introduced to the concept that my coach first introduced, my old coach first introduced to me. She called consciousness creates reality.
Yeah.
I fought this idea tooth and nail. I can, like sometimes the best teachers are the people who had to like really break their teeth in getting a concept.
Yes.
And so I had to learn it through many, many teachers and fall and get up again so many times. But it's something we say in L'Chadodi, Sof Maaseh b'machshava tchila. At the end, there's some physical creation, but in the beginning, there's a thought.
Yes.
So first there's thought, and then there's physicality. And this is manifest very beautifully and in a complex way, but also in a simple way in the Kabbalistic tree of the Sfirot. So first, in Keter, above the head, there's that like connection to something higher. So first, like some idea comes into your life, like, I think I want a house.
Okay.
You don't have any clarity around that. There's just some sort of house concept, right? And then as it starts coming down, it goes into your mental faculties, into Chokhmah and Bina, and you start investigating and talking to people and learning and gaining wisdom and speaking to experts and things like that. And finally, you're able to vocalize, I want a house. And I want a house in this kind of neighborhood and this many bedrooms with this kind of walls and this kind of kitchen and blah, blah, blah. And you start being able to verbalize it.
Right.
But then you need to make architectural drawings, and you do that with your hands. So that's, chesed and gevura. You want the chesed to make spaces that have light and connection and beauty, but you want gevura because you need walls,
Right.
right? There actually needs to be clear dimensions to this house, but you still don't have a house. You just have a piece of paper with some blue lines on it. That's all you have, right? And as you go down, then you get into Netzach and you get into Hod. Netzach is like forward moving. Okay, let's start thinking about how we're going to make this happen. Let's get the contractor together and the supplies together and order everything we need. But we need to pause every once in a while for Hod to enjoy the process, because otherwise it's just torture, as anybody who's built a house knows. But we also need to pause to sort of check and make sure, is everything in balance with our vision? Because if you just push forward, you might miss some really important elements that you had originally wanted that somehow didn't make their way into the blueprint.
Right.
And then you get into Malchut, which is the dominion of us women, right? Malchut is when you actually build the house and have the house that you can walk into, and it's this tangible structure.
Creation.
Now, an architect can already envision a blueprint without even being drawn,
Right.
and envision what that blueprint will construct.
Yes.
And without that vision, there will be no house.
Right.
So it is with your thoughts. If I believe that no one loves me, then as that belief trickles down into my speech and my actions and my behavior and how I relate to people, I will figure out a way to make myself unappealing to other human beings.
That's really powerful because you're creating your own reality essentially from
I
your
am
thoughts.
creating my own reality through
Yes.
my thought. So, for example, I used to have that belief, and there were all sorts of strategies that I used to hold on to that belief and to make sure that I perpetuated it. One was that if someone was nice to me, because no one loves me, if someone was nice to me, then I had to distort their behavior and their words to fit my story. So I'd come to the conclusion that they just pity me. They want something from me. They're not being, and I turn them into a liar, basically.
Oh, wow.
because they don't actually mean that they want to hang out with me. There's some other ulterior motive going on because people don't like me. You get it?
You really want to stay consistent with that story. So you made everything around
We
that
are
story.
so deeply attached to our stories. Our
Yeah.
stories are how we make sense of the world and create a sense of safety.
Yes.
And most of our stories come from our childhood. So, for example, if you have a 60-year-old government official who makes a policy that makes no sense, for example, like garbage should only be collected once a month. Everyone would be like, that's a totally ridiculous policy. You could see all of the health problems that would create. And we would have a rational conversation about how that can't be the policy.
Right.
And we'd think this guy is nuts, right?
Yes.
But if my 5-year-old self created a policy, I bow down to it as if it's God.
Right.
And most of our beliefs come from very early childhood when our cognitive capacity and our resources were really limited.
Yes.
Like most children of divorced parents think it's their fault that their parents got divorced.
Right. Yeah.
And that is almost never the case. It is a totally illogical thought pattern
right.
that needs to be undone at some point because it's child logic, and child logic is usually messed up. Like they're not that smart.
It's true.
Right?
They lack the life experience. They lack the perspective. They lack the deep understanding.
They also have some wonky cognitive functions that just makes them incapable of like drawing healthy conclusions.
Yes.
So if I believe that I'm unloved, I'm gonna, for example, somebody calls me, I won't call them back. Or my body language might be really closed, and I might think I'm acting shy, but they might think I'm acting snooty.
Right.
I might avoid eye contact.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, she doesn't like me. So simple. So all of these behaviors come, and then lo and behold, I have a world where I'm not attracting people into my life, or I'm attracting the wrong kind of people into my life. And there's a whole other collective, subconscious, energetic version of it too, which is that somehow I might attract things even not through my behavior or my speech or my actions. It's just somehow certain things come into my life. Like I've seen this happen with people who have a very, very limited perspective on money. It's something that my husband and I work with people a lot, is on their mindset around money. If they have a very limited mindset around money, their appliances break more often than other people's appliances break.
Really?
Yes. I used to be like, could that be true? But I've just seen it so many times that it's just become a pattern. They have more accidents. They have more sudden money that disappears, or, for example, appliances that break.
Right. Right. And you have to pay the repairman, or you have to buy a new appliance. Yeah.
Or they're stuck without an appliance.
Right. That's true. Right. Yes.
And so for me, I'm less into the idea of controlling my beliefs and more into the idea of becoming aware of my beliefs.
Okay.
Because even the language of control is there's something kind of masculine and warlike about it.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. Mm-hmm.
But awareness allows me to notice, hey, I'm noticing this belief come up. I'll give you an example. I'm taking a conscious eating course.
Okay.
And in that, oh, you should interview her. She's great. In any case, so I'm taking this conscious eating course. And in the course today, we were asked to eat and not do anything else. Not read, not be on the computer, not basically try to multitask while we're eating, which is really hard for me. So she asked me, what comes up for you when you think about sitting down and doing nothing else? And I said to her, oh, just panic shows up in my body. And I feel like I'm being unproductive and I'm wasting my time.
Right.
And then when I sat with it even longer, I noticed that there's so much worthiness I have around productivity.
Yes.
That if I'm just sitting and eating, I'm not worthy. And that is existentially, like gut-wrenching.
Wow. Yeah, because you took it on a deeper level. You magnified it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really sat with it, and I gave it permission to come up and say hello. And when you do that, so then you notice it, And the thought has something to teach you. It's not just that you have to kick it out of your life and throw it in the garbage. It's that Hashem brought that thought to you, just like Hashem brought you into my life because you have something to teach me. Hashem is bringing every thought and every circumstance into my life because it has something to teach me. And the lessons of every belief, this is something that I learned from Byron Katie, a Goyish Rebbitzin, right? So I'm being jokey here, but that every single belief has embedded in it a whole bunch of opposites. And those opposites are gems. So the opposite of people don't love me is that people love me.
Right.
Which A is a lot more true. And B is gorgeous. To take that in is just so much more nourishing than just taking people don't love me and putting it in the garbage.
Yes.
The opposite is more enriching for my life than the original statement.
Okay. So then here's the tricky question. I know people are going to be thinking this. Like, okay, so now I want to stop thinking that people don't love me because you're right. It is more enriching to think people love me. Of course, that makes so much sense. So how do you make that shift?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So you have any belief that you have, you've built an entire neural web around it. Tons of evidence, tons of support.
Yes.
It's each piece of evidence like pillars of a building.
Yes.
And what you've done is you've shown up, so to speak, to your intellectual courthouse as the plaintiff that says, nobody loves her. Okay?
Right.
And you know who's sitting at the defense table?
Hashem?
No one.
Oh, okay. Oh, to defend like nobody. Okay, I understand now.
Defend a different perspective. There's nobody there.
Okay.
Right. And
okay,
and the side of the plaintiff, right? You've got like a whole stack of evidence. Oh, this person didn't call you, and so didn't smile at you, and your parents hit you, and I don't know, your father died when you were little, so nobody loves you, right?
Yeah.
So then the cure for that is to have a balanced, appropriate, logical courtroom. No courtroom can function. Only in a dictatorship does a courtroom function where the plaintiff shows up and there's no defense.
Right. I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not a Jewish courtroom. In a Jewish courtroom, there's a defense.
Yes.
And the defense presents an alternative perspective.
Yes.
But that perspective has to be bolstered by evidence, or else the defense's case is weak.
Right.
And so that's how you do it. You present evidence that starts to expand what your mind thinks is possible and gives your mind an opportunity to explore different perspectives and see how they make your body feel. So how does it feel in your body? Just take this on for size.
Right.
If you were to believe that nobody loves you, and anybody who's listening can also do the same. If you're believing that nobody loves you, how does that feel in your body?
So sad and shrinking.
Mm-hmm. And where's Hashem when you're believing the thought that nobody loves you?
I don't feel him there. He's definitely not there for me.
Not there,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So if Hashem is not there, it's not true. Your body is shutting down and shrinking,
right,
as a way of letting you know, this doesn't taste good.
Right.
I'm recoiling from this belief. Oh yeah, and Hashem's not here.
Right.
Okay. So let's explore the opposite. People do love me.
Now I'm filled up. Like I feel it. I feel filled up.
But we need some evidence. So can you give me some evidence of how it's true that people love you?
Yes. They're coming to my house for Rosh Hashanah. They want to spend time.
Nice. What else?
Some of them tell me that they love me. They'll just say it right out. I love you.
Nice.
Some of them show me with a hug, like with physical affection.
What else?
Some of them send me texts or emails just to show that they're thinking of me. Others call me and let me know, so many times people call me, Vera, I was thinking of you. I can't even tell you how many times even my friends or relatives, Vera, I'm thinking of you today. I'm like, really? That's so nice to know that somebody's thinking of me.
Yes. That you're taking, they're busy and you're taking up space in their minds. That's a lot of love.
Yes.
I want to add to that.
Okay.
Newborns are gorgeous as can be and such a pain. It's exhausting taking care of a newborn, right?
Yes.
If people didn't love you, you wouldn't have survived your first year of life.
True.
there had to be a lot of acts of love.
Yes.
A lot of diaper changes, even
Yes.
the poopy that goes all the way up the back,
At the back and the hair. Yes, I
and the
know.
teething, the whole
Oh,
thing, right? Like,
yes.
that's a lot of love.
Yes.
So every piece of evidence that we bring, notice what it's doing to you. I'm looking at your face. Your face is lighting up. You're laughing, you're smiling, you're nodding. It's
Yes.
affecting your posture.
Yes.
And every time you nod and every piece of evidence you give, you're bolstering this alternative perspective.
Right.
And then, right, we have this whole conversation, and then you go into your life. And every single time, if you really want to ingrain this new perspective into your brain, every single time that there's an act of love, and it could be minuscule, it could be one of your kid puts like a chocolate on your pillow, or your kid takes a shower when you ask him to take a shower, right? Like simple like
Wow.
that, right? So you say, people love me.
Wow. Okay.
I'm
So you're
choosing to
continuously
use this as
strengthening.
evidence that people love me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And you do that enough with enough beliefs, two things happen. First of all, you train your brain to do this. This is something I teach I have two books. One is Hold That Thought, the other is Inner Voices. And I teach these tools in those books. And you do it enough and your brain starts doing it on its own, which might sound insane, but that has been my experience.
Right. Like once it's trained enough, once you've done it enough times consciously, eventually it goes into that subconscious, unconscious programming.
Yeah. So one experience I had, I've been doing this work for like, I don't know, 2 years or something. And we were going to America and we had a layover in Heathrow Airport, which is the biggest mall. Nowadays, most airports are like malls, but back then Heathrow was really the mall. And in order to walk from one gate to the other gate, we had to walk through one of those like big perfume and makeup sections.
Yes.
And I see this massive stand-up poster of a scantily clad, famous TV, like actress or something, I don't remember who it was, next to a bottle of perfume.
Okay.
And at the bottom, it just says the name of the brand. There's no words on this poster whatsoever except for the name of the brand. And I look at the poster and my whole body starts to contract. This happens all in like a millisecond, okay? My whole body starts to contract and there's a voice in my head that says, is it true? So you're looking at me like, what do you mean, is it true? Because even though there are no words on that poster is screaming a lot of words. 1, I should look like her. 2, she actually looks like that. 3, her looking good means she's happy.
Right.
And loved and everything's working out for her.
Yes.
If I wear that perfume, I'll be like her. Right?
Exactly.
There's a lot being said without any words. It is a very loud poster.
Yes.
And my mind said, is it true? And I think I might have even out loud said, no. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like liberated from all of those beliefs, like all in one go. It was amazing.
Wow.
Is it always that way? No. But it was a really cool experience that my mind on its own noticed that there was a story being projected my way and that I could choose to believe it or not believe it.
Right. Through conscious awareness.
Yes.
That's the key. See, I feel like that's the key. I'm vibrating. I'm on the same wavelength as what you're saying. Like, I totally get it. It's just, I think with the tough part is like what you said, like in real life, like after the conversation is over, when we all go back into doing whatever we're supposed to be doing, like to incorporate that, like to keep that in mind, because our narratives, our stories are so strong in our lives. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Sometimes we forget, like we understand the concept of conscious awareness, like we get it. It's just in the moment when we see that poster or that billboard or the whatever it is that we see, and like or social media is the biggest culprit of this. You see all these pictures. Why can't I be that thin, that rich, that successful, go on that vacation? Why my family is not that perfect? Like I want all that. Like why does this person have it and I don't? Well, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. And that's a lot of beliefs right there.
Yes.
So that's for me, this is a meditative practice. It's an active meditative practice of looking at my thoughts, questioning them, exploring alternative perspectives. And it's become so much a part of my family culture.
Right.
that we hear it in each other and we call each other on our false beliefs all the time. Like I hear now when people are talking, I hear something they say and I can see where that's going to lead them to 10 years from now.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Right. There's like a whole sort of chain of events
Yes.
that X belief is going to lead to, and a totally different belief is going to lead to a whole different chain of events.
Right.
So and it requires that you put intention into it. But what's cool is that beliefs are much, much easier to change than physical reality.
That's true.
Anything in the realm of energy, and a belief is energetic, like it's
Yeah.
so ethereal, you can't even touch it.
Right.
Anything in the realm of energy is much faster to change than physical reality. So if you work in this space, even though on the physical plane it looks like nothing has changed, because you've shifted your mindset, it will eventually trickle down into your physical reality without you having to put much effort. You'll just attract the things that you need or behave in the way that you need. Things just change.
I love this. This gives me so much to think about, but I really, really love this because like I hear such MS, like I hear such truth in what you're saying. Like it really resonates with me. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us on America's Top Rebbitzins and the Meredith class. May Hashem watch over all the Jewish people and give enormous strength to the IDF soldiers, including Raz ben Doron, Rinat bat Machola, Roy ben Nitza, and Ram ben Moore. Thank you so much again.
Pleasure so much.